Welcome back to Whiteboard Thursday. My name is Robert Newman. I'm the founder of InboundREM. Before I got into online marketing and founded an internet marketing company specialized in real estate, what I did for 20 plus years is run call centers. And I've been on the phones, I've done door knocking, I ran call centers for Sprint, AT&T, WorldCom, and many others. Other companies ran sales teams. In total, I've probably been in charge of 3,000 to 5,000 people on the phone. So when I say there's no such thing as a bad internet lead, question mark, I have a lot of experience in answering this question for salespeople, for realtors that I get on the phone. If you've ever worked for somebody else and they've handed you off leads, they're going to constantly tell you that there's no such thing as a bad lead. Or they will if they're a reasonably good sales manager, or they'll have some kind of pat answer when it comes to there is no such thing as a bad lead. Now, is that true, though? Is that actually true? Are there really no bad leads and just bad salespeople? So let's dig into that a little bit. My thought about leads in general is if you get a warm breathing person on the phone, it used to be in the old days that that person would be somebody in the United States, number one. And so even when I used to get, like when I was in my 20s and I was really, really involved in trying to learn how to be the best salesperson possible, I would oftentimes take people that were cold calling me on my home phone and I would turn around and have something that I would pitch them on, just to keep practicing my own sales skills. And the old adage was whoever, gets off the phone first loses. That's what we used to do. And I still see some people on the internet proposing that that is the right attitude for a salesperson to have. A very black and white attitude about sales. That is, if you're on the phone with somebody and you get off the phone and you don't have something of value, that you are not a good salesperson. Well, it's a complicated question, because there is no doubt that every single living, breathing person on the telephone that you ever get, even if they're not qualified in the way that you thought they should be, could theoretically be a viable lead. Now, whether or not they're a viable lead now versus sometime other time is the question. Whether or not a really great salesperson can take somebody who's not ready to move for a whole year and convince that person that now is the right time is going to be very dependent on where you are in your evolution as a salesperson. I have certainly taken hard no's and turned them into hard yeses. Usually, though, it's no longer for the last 20 years or so of my career. It was never by using the persuasion methods that I was taught when I was in my 20s. Closing 5 times, overcoming every rebuttal, always having an answer to an objection. These things never really worked quite as well as people would like have you believe. In really high pressure, in-person sales scenarios such as door knocking, oftentimes you only have that 10, 20 seconds to do one of two things. Establish a relationship, establish some trust, or 2, make the sale. Oftentimes really high pressure sales presentations and tactics work in those scenarios, and I've done lots of that. One of my very first gigs was selling perfume in parking lots. You had one chance, very briefly, to convince somebody to buy perfume. There was no such thing as a bad contact. Even those people that are trying to run by you as you get this perfume, your objective in that business was to put the perfume into their hand and apply something that Zig Ziglar called the puppy dog close to try to start getting them used to holding it, feeling it, and then putting it on. And then theoretically, that's your presentation, the whole thing, those 3 steps, getting it in their hands, getting them to put it on, and then basically starting into the pitch and the close, all in under 1 to 2 minutes, okay? There were people that were really good at doing that. Transparently, I wasn't. I wasn't very good at doing that. That was not one of the sales businesses that I was number 1 and number 2 in. The businesses that I personally have been number 1 and number 2 in are businesses that require a deeper amount of product knowledge. It's a longer presentation. The financial obligation to the client is much, much higher. Unlike most salespeople, money has never been a thing in my head. So the bigger the offer, the bigger the contract, the more I excelled. Because to me, it was all about just understanding whether the economics of the offer made sense to the person I was on the phone with. And now that's where this question really becomes interesting, because there was such a thing as a good or bad lead because of the way that I sold. If I had somebody on the phone that was responsible for 10 locations and $100,000, and I only had one call with them, but the requirement was I was supposed to be prepared, the answer is I'm almost always prepared. I usually have done 10 times the amount of homework that anybody else has done, so I take that really rare, high-pressure situation and I'm completely prepared to present a high-value offer, and I'm completely prepared to then ask that high-value prospect, are you ready to make a commitment now? Now, how does this apply to salespeople in real estate? So here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm not so sure that there's any such thing as a bad contact, a bad relationship development. When a renter calls you off some lead generation profile and says, oh, I'm a renter and I'm not qualified to buy a home, the normal salesperson hangs up. Now, that's never what I've done, ever. I establish relationships with every person I get on the phone with, always, okay? And there are many people out in the real estate world like Ryan Serhant and Buffini, and they're going to tell you the same thing I'm going to tell you right now. The quality of a contact is really based on the quality of the relationship they can generate out of thin air very quickly. And asking somebody the who, what, when, where of who they are as a person usually generates a lot of relationship in a very short amount of time, because people are almost always, even when they're approached by a stranger, interested in talking about themselves. Now, if you are able to apply some advanced sales techniques like mirroring as an example to those situations, oftentimes you can generate an incredibly strong relationship in an incredibly short amount of time. Making this question, are there really any bad leads? Well, probably not. Somebody calls you on your profile, they don't speak your native language. That's a bad lead. You can't communicate, it's done. That's a bad lead. I would agree that's a bad lead. Somebody that's a renter, in that case, as long as they speak English, I'm not so sure that I agree that it's a bad lead. Because what you've got is you've got somebody with a pulse that is speaking to you, and you generate a relationship, which a really good sales professional can do in about a minute or two. And then what you do is you go, hey, I'm just curious, I'm just like you. I'm a person out here trying to make a living. And I'm curious to know if you know any homeowners. You always say yes questions. Like, you know some homeowners in Fairhope, right? As an example. And they go, yeah, I know a couple of homeowners. How long have they owned their home? You immediately jump into questions that are not say no questions. You jump into say yes questions. Questions where they're just going to be dicks. Now remember, they've already got a relationship with them. So they go, well, my brother owns a home in Fairhope and he's lived in it for 5 years. Now here's the part where being an incredible salesperson comes in. You sell the first contact that you're on the phone with. You go, I don't know if you know this, but with interest rates falling and Fairhope, and these coastal towns having an uncertain future, I would strongly believe that this might be one of the amazing times to get out from underneath that house and sell it. I'm just curious to know if you'd be willing to arrange an introduction if I had a high value proposal for your brother. And now, bang, right there, ladies and gentlemen, we've turned what was ostensibly a terrible lead into a good one. So the answer is somewhere in the middle. And I'm going to teach everybody here on what I'm going to tell you, what the difference and how you know whether or not you're a good salesperson or bad, or how you know where you fall into this bucket. There's a difference between a condition and an objection. An objection is something that theoretically you can overcome or get around that will yield a positive result for you and your organization that you're representing. And that is an objection. Everything that falls in that bucket, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, we're not ready yet, I can go on and on. Those are all objections. Because even if they are not ready, maybe they know somebody who is, and your job is to generate a relationship, to talk to that person, to try to find out if they know anybody else that might be in the general vicinity of being ready, or if the conditions of them being ready are right, such as I've owned a home in an area that maybe now is the time to consider getting out. Okay, that would be a listing opportunity. If you could get the number to that homeowner, then you would call that homeowner and say, hey, I'm the brother of X, and I just wanted to talk to you about this idea that may seem completely foreign. I'm coming to you out of left field. However, now might be the time for you at least to consider this. And if I can give you a good enough case, give you something to think about that you may not have thought about, would you be willing to give me 5 minutes of your valuable time? If the answer, and so again, you're always just asking say-yes questions. Lead quality. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the quality or the closeness of a person being ready to buy is absolutely a thing. There's no doubt about it. Are there really bad leads or just bad salespeople? It's definitely a combination of the two. There are bad salespeople or people that haven't taken the idea of turning sales into a profession to the highest level possible. And there's many of those in real estate. Many people with no sales training, many people who've relied upon a sphere of influence and really have never actually made an actual sales call ever. And so when they get on the phone with a lead, quote unquote, that they're paying for from some service, their expectation is the same level of quality that you might get off a referral. I'm generally ready to go. I generally have the money. I'm generally financially qualified. Or I'm close to being ready to list a home. And then you go, okay, well, that's a lead. So ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that most people don't tell you. In the internet world, if you got what I just described, that's a 10 of 10 internet lead. 10 of 10. It's very rare that you get anything that I just mentioned to you as an internet lead. You get people kicking tires, waiting for a year, doing some general research. What happened is their information got caught up in the net of a really good sales funnel, generally speaking. Or they were required to submit their information before they could see a list of properties or something similar to that, which makes the lead quality incredibly bad because they're not ready anytime soon. And now we come back to this. Are there any really bad leads or just bad salespeople? You have got to be prepared to be a 10 of 10 salesperson to potentially get into turning that 2 of 10 lead into an 8 of 10, to somebody who might even be ready. Because even if you are the world-class salesperson that I am describing, you still have to take a real live human being and a family and all the things and start talking to them about the massive responsibility and job of moving and selling the home and listing the home and getting it together and all the different things which technically are objections, but some of them are going to be conditions. Your job as a salesperson is to understand and be realistic about what the difference between an objection and a condition is. And in the doing of that, you will answer the question, are there bad leads or just bad salespeople? Lead quality in the internet world is generally pretty poor. There are exceptions. There's Zillow and Trulia and a handful of people that hand you almost always somewhere between the 7 and 10 of the internet lead quality. Somebody that's in the vicinity of being ready. But because there is no such thing as a 10 of 10 all the time, that is why companies out there make really great money off selling you guys CRMs, because you are always being given stuff that is simply not ready to go, and you don't either have the skills to move them off the ledge. And many of you are going to be like scoffing when you watch this video and saying, oh, Robert, I have plenty of sales skills. Well, sales skills are persuasion. And persuasion is getting somebody to do something that they absolutely said they were not going to do. So I have to ask all of you that question. Are you that good? Are you that good that you can move them off the needle? Because if you cannot, or don't most of the time, then you aren't necessarily able to point at this lead. And like, if you have somebody who says, I'm going to be ready in 2 years, you have a lead. It is qualified. Full stop. Okay, because you've got one or two choices. You keep following up. And the good news is that you don't have to have the skills overnight. You can build them over time. And that's where being a really diligent professional salesperson comes in, because you give me something that's ready in 2 years and I'm going to call them every 6 months until the 2 years comes up. And what am I doing in that time? If I don't have the skills to move them off 2 years to now, I do have the skills to build a relationship. And if you're not a relationship builder and you're in sales, I would ask humbly and submit, what are you doing in sales? Because at a minimum, it's about building relationships, and even quick ones, 1 minute ones. It's still about building relationships. So you build a relationship with them and you get to know them better. With real estate, I love real estate because the payout is worth the effort. like you are getting a big enough commission that building a relationship with somebody over 2 years, sitting on the phone for an hour or two a day and calling every lead in your pipeline that might be ready in the next couple of years is a valuable exercise, and that's a good sales activity. Even if you didn't have the skill, you'd have the persistence and the diligence, which means that it goes back to this. Is there really no bad leads or just bad salespeople? Because the answer is a little bit of both. You could be because if you're not calling your leads and working them, I don't know if I would say you're a great salesperson. You don't have to be skilled enough to move them on the persuasion needle, because that's a great salesperson. That's a world-class salesperson. That person, if they exist in your organization, they're already number one or number two. Making the call count. I love this one. This is one that made every call center that I ever worked in. The way I handled this is the way that I got all of my call centers to outperform other call centers, because it was an idea that was so simple yet so overlooked, which is one of the greatest basketball players of all time, Michael Jordan, used to talk to people about his jump shot. There was a time in his career in which he was winning all these jump shot competitions, from jumping from the top of the key, dunking the ball in the basket. And I'm not much of a sports guy, but what he said about doing that, because people would say, okay, how long have you been practicing your jump shot? And at one point in an interview, maybe in frustration, I think he turned around to the interviewer and said something in the line of, the jump shot. I start out my day practicing the dribble, okay? Because I think he got tired of answering the question. And that is exactly what great salespeople do until they can dribble the ball in their sleep. And what is the dribble for a salesperson? The dribble for the salesperson is taking the questions that you get on the regular and making sure that before you get those questions, you practice and drill your response with another human being, in the mirror, to your phone, you record it, then you listen it back to yourself, and you keep doing it over and over and over again. You fine-tune your presentation. You spend every single day. If you don't have a 30-second elevator pitch for somebody random that you meet in an elevator that may be a real estate prospect, then yeah, I'm not so sure that you certainly aren't one of those people that is going to be world-class. You're going to be a person that if I sent you 100 internet leads, I'll be lucky if you close 1 or 2. I can send the same 100 leads to a person that is making the call count, has practiced their presentation, and they'll convert 10 instead of 2. And it'll be the same quality leads that you get. It's just 10 instead of 2. So the answer is somewhere in the middle. Is there really such a thing as a bad internet lead? If you're getting stuff that is conditionally unable to close, they don't speak the same language, they not only do they not own a home, they never will own a home. And I'd argue about that because I have an answer, a response to that. I would talk about investment and other things that every single call that you get on, making the call count is an opportunity to create a relationship with somebody. And how do you create relationship? You provide value. My value to a person who said, I don't own a home and I never will and I never want to, it's like, well, let's talk about how much the average homeowner has compounded interest. Let's talk about homes being the number one investment that you'll ever make in your entire life. Because what are your aspirations and goals as a human being? Well, I work as a sandwich guy at Subway. My aspirations right now are to come home and get high. All right, do you think that that's going to be the only thing you ever want to do? There's a world in which that person finally gets off the phone. You've understood that they have no aspirations, no dreams, no ability, and no willingness to do anything ever. However, I want you all to understand something. I made that call count. Apparently, I made my Lifesaver count too. Okay? I made the contact count. And even though I'm the founder of a company and I have many people that work for me, I still make my calls count. I take calls and I handle them the same in terms of the level of consultation that I give, about the same way every time. I walk my talk in this. I practice, drill, and rehearse my presentation, even though I've done it for 16 straight years. I take small opportunities and try to make big ones. If I'm talking to a realtor who cannot do some marketing with me, maybe I can get them on my podcast. Maybe I can get them to do a review. There's a lot of different things that you can do to make the call count. As a real estate agent, you have countless ways to create value for yourself if you're talking to anybody that's even remotely a prospective client. You have the way to get them to do a review for you. It doesn't matter whether they've bought or sold real estate from you. You have the ability to create a relationship with somebody who seems very social, but maybe not very wealthy. And that very social person probably knows 100 other people, and maybe some of them are wealthy. So you create a relationship with that person. You go to a function with them, a barbecue, a play, something, your kids go to school together, and the next thing you know, you've met 15 other people through them, and the whole time you're shaking hands and you're saying, you know, I'm a realtor, I'm proud of it, I love what I do, I fulfill dreams. You have your tagline ready, that's making the call count. Your tagline is, I make the average homeowner in Van Nuys independently wealthy. And everybody goes, what? What do you mean you do that? It's like, well, I make them wealthy because I help them get into a home. Generally speaking, Van Nuys is the place where first home buyers get into homes. And once they have that home, generally speaking, like 99% of the time, your life changes and for the better. I want you to understand, everybody that's watching this video, that is making the call count, making the contact count, making the connection count. Every single one of those things would say to me, like, is there such a thing as a bad internet lead? And I would go, the only time there's such a thing as a bad internet lead is when conditionally they can't buy anything. Even if they were not interested in, or they were somewhat sabotaged into creating the internet lead, there's still a way to make the call count. You can laugh at them. I also hate when like lead forms force me to register with something. I'm right there with you. You do what's called mirroring. You get on their side of the conversation. The minute that you're on their side of the conversation, now you'll be heard as a person. And once you're heard as a person, you have the opportunity to truly make a difference inside that relationship, that micro relationship, and then move them in the direction that hopefully, if you're a responsible salesperson, once you understand these skills, it's like owning a bazooka. You really need to be very careful about how you use it. You need to use it ethically and morally. But once you understand how to use it ethically and morally, you move the person in the direction of a decision you think is going to be better for them. So hopefully, if you are trying to get people to list your home, you believe this is a good time to list. I do in most markets. It's just so everybody watching this video, like right now is a pretty good time. Like, is it the best? Who knows? I don't have a crystal ball. But the idea of making the call count is going to change the perspective. I as a lead, so full transparency, I own a lead generation company. And when people register in the back of the website, I tell my customers, on a scale of 1 to 10, these lead registrations are probably a 1. Okay, it's not that they're not leads, they are leads. I have a single client that is making well over $1 million on their leads that they have registered on the back of their website. Why? They call every single one. They establish a relationship, they make the call count, and I am pretty convinced that what is there to be gotten is gotten. And they don't have a fancy CRM or any other fancy way of doing all this. They have the old school hard work method, which works every single time, no exceptions, where I talk to every single person that's contacted my business. That is why sales work is the lowest paid easy work that you'll ever find and the highest paid hard work. And that is a Tom Hopkinism that I'm using on all of you. That is literally, I have found that to be true. If you want to work and you want to make some money, there's no doubt that sales is for you. You want to call every person that reaches out to you through your website, and your only objective is making a relationship, creating a bridge between you and understanding that person. You'll be shocked with how many of those people will move into being clients of yours, and how quickly those people will refer you to other people that will also be clients of yours. Anyway, I hope that I've answered the question, is there such a thing as a bad internet lead? I've been Robert Newman. If I said something that you liked or you hated, I don't know. But either way, give me a thumbs up on the video. Leave me a comment. I'd be happy to have a dialogue with you if you have questions.